us. For more on the state of stimulus talks in Washington, let's bring in Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. He is a member of the Budget Committee. And, Senator, it's good to see you this morning.
Good to be with you, Becky. Thank you.
So let's run this through. Right now, the Senate is looking at about a $1 trillion plan. The president would like to see something that's closer to $1.3 trillion. And then the House is looking for something that's between $2.3 and $3 trillion, depending on how this comes up. There is talk that the Senate will put forth a new proposal next week. What can you tell us about what you're hearing on that front?
Sure. I think we're very close to having an agreement, at least among Republicans in the Senate, that would be, you hear the term skinny a lot. It's certainly a much more modest bill than the others that you've been talking about, certainly than what the Speaker is talking about, that focuses more on the needs as opposed to just a broad stimulus. So we're going to focus on education, of course, making sure that as students are going back to school now, that they're in a safe environment and that, remove some of the anxiety around that, focusing on extending the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses, but again, focusing that down to maybe even a little smaller target and some demonstration of loss of revenue, not just simply across the board. Certainly focus on the forgiveness aspect of the first wave of PPP, because as we know, those were pretty small loans by and large, and a lot of small businesses that don't need an extra couple $1,000s of compliance costs on the forgiveness side of it. So there's a streamlined version of that in all of that. And of course, we need to make sure that the pandemic itself has enough, the fight against the pandemic, I should probably say, it has enough resources to make sure that we're getting to that end, which is the ultimate stimulus, and that is wiping out this disease and letting our economy go back to a rocket ship.
Hey, Senator, from what I've heard, that skinnier package is something closer to $500 billion. Normally, when you're in negotiations with sides, the side that's at the bottom comes up a little, the side that's at the top comes down a little. You guys are taking the floor and cutting it in half, and you're saying that is something that you think you might get consensus among Republicans. That sounds to me like we are a lot further away from getting any sort of a deal done between Democrats and Republicans.
Well, that's a great point. You're exactly right, Becky. I mean, what we're doing right now is trying to find our position, if you will, the polar position we start with, obviously realizing that in a negotiation and in a compromise situation, you're probably going to lose some Republicans on one side and some Democrats on the other side, and the middle is going to hopefully be big enough to pass something that's meaningful and that matters to people. But remembering there are also there's some unspent dollars, and that's where Republicans have been focusing a lot lately. There are some unspent dollars from the CARES Act, probably about $350 billion, and that's not just pocket change. So we're trying to focus on that first, repurposing existing appropriations so that they hit the targets and we don't drive up the debt and deficit any further. The other thing is there are some policy issues. I mean, we can stimulate the economy with all the liquidity in the world, but if the vultures disguised as trial lawyers are hovering over every hospital, every clinic, every school, and every small business waiting to pounce, we also have to have, I believe, some liability reform.
What your plan does not include is anything that would go to the states or cities as a way of kind of bolstering up those areas that have been hardest hit. I realize that's something that the Democrats have put front and center, but we have had several Republicans who have come on the show and said that they are in favor of that too, because they are in states that have big cities that have been hit hard. And with the president's additional moves last night, it looks like, to try and make sure that some of these cities can't get any federal funding, I would think that is going to be a much bigger priority. Do you think that this plan that you're talking about would get any support on the other side of the aisle? You may not even have all the Republicans on it, but I can't see you getting a single Democratic vote. Is this anything more than just kind of putting up something so that your members can say they voted for a package? It's kind of baffling to me. I understand the Democrats have stood firm and are not willing to come down on anything, but you guys are now taking the lowest common denominator and cutting it in half.
Well, oftentimes, though, Becky, the lowest common denominator, remembering it first has to start with the one side. And in this case, among Senate Republicans, we need to find a starting point. And I think we're very close to doing exactly that. What a a package that actually passes both chambers, and remembering you need 60 votes in the Senate, what that would look like and that would go to the president will be certainly different than whatever 51 Republicans come up with, say, on Tuesday of next week. But that said, you do have to have a starting point. But we also have to be realistic about things. At the end of the day, we also have an additional issue, and that is we're coming up on the end of the fiscal year at the end of this month. We're going to have some sort of a continuing resolution that takes us hopefully into December so that we can get past the election and know that the government's being funded. That's going to help, I think, everybody get a little more breathing room. It's going to help provide some certainty to our military as well as the other government stakeholders. And again, just remove that fog, if you will, until we get past this election. But in the meantime, that may very well be the vehicle that provides the compromise of which you speak, that's going to be somewhere between where Republicans are today and where Democrats are today, that actually helps people.
Senator, let me ask you very quickly. We had Bill Daley on the show yesterday, former chief of staff for President Obama. Earlier in the week, we had Mick Mulvaney on, former chief of staff or acting chief of staff for President Trump. And both of them said that in an election year, they would anticipate things happening very quickly. What it sounds like, what I'm hearing from you, though, is not a process that gets us there quickly, particularly when you've got an election that's about 60 days away. How quickly do you think there will be a final plan that comes together?
Sure. So, Becky, former Speaker John Boehner used to always say Congress is a place where things happen very slowly until they happen very fast. And I think to the former chief's points, I think that's exactly right. And I think that's what we may be up against. Remember, there are people in different positions. There are certain people on the Democratic side who think that not having a deal is what's best for them politically. There are several people on the Republican side that know that having a deal is what may very well get them over the top, particularly in the Senate. But there are also a number of moderate Democrats and freshmen in these purple congressional districts that need some sort of a deal. Politics actually does work. It may seem clumsy, but at the end of the day, the people will drive the process. And I think enough pressure being put on politicians, and you'll see something come together quickly after there's been a long negotiation.
Yeah, it's never fun watching the sausage get made. Senator Cramer, thank you very much. We appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.